Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. Now, over the next 6 weeks or so, we're going to be diving into the book that is coming out on February 21st, Unlocking the Magic of Leadership, 5 Keys to Inspire Yourself, Empower Others, and Drive Extraordinary Results. So I'm going to be pulling a couple of my favorite chapters every week that we're going to dive into. What are some of the hot tips that you're going to get, and why is it important? So this week, we're going to be focusing on the section of Manage Yourself First and the very first chapter, which is all about emotional intelligence. Now, as leaders, when we are trying to lead other people, if we don't have our stuff under control, it is almost impossible to get other people to follow us. So when we're thinking about emotional intelligence is that thing that leadership is built on. It's knowing not only yourself, but how you're going to show up in moments of stress. What are those things that you're going to try to avoid or overcorrect instead of avoiding? Maybe you're just going to rage and get mad. Or what are those things if somebody comes at you a certain way that's just going to flip a switch, and either you're going to fall into that fight, flight, freeze, or please mode. So this book really dives into how our brain reacts during challenging situations. And the biggest tip for this that I want to talk about this week is when we think about our emotions, a lot of times we're like,
I'm not an emotional person, Summer. I'm logical. I'm analytical. My emotions do not get the best of me.
We're emotional creatures. As much as we like to use that shield of logic and analytics, we are emotional creatures. And when our brain, the number one purpose of our brain is to keep us out of what it considers danger. So when it sees something that it considers danger, it flips a switch to us. We have a bunch of hormones and a bunch of things racing through our body that tends to make us a little less intelligent than we were before we got triggered, right? So when we think about triggers, flip the switch, all of a sudden, all of these things are coursing through our body and we're reacting in ways that maybe we don't want to. Maybe aren't the best for the relationship in front of us, or maybe aren't how we want to show up. I can remember when this lesson was learned in a very big way for me. You see, I was the one, I prided myself on being logical. I was not an emotional creature. That's what I would say. I'm not an emotional creature. And I was working at the world of Disney, and y'all have heard me talk about the world of Disney. It was not the finest point in my career. There was a lot of different ways to handle the situations that came at me. And in almost every case, I did not handle them in a way that lined up with my values and who I am. I was triggered in a lot of different ways. And the day that my leadership team decided that it would be a healthier fit for me to go somewhere else was a rough day. That was the first time that I had failed in such spectacular fashion. And I'm sitting around the table with my leaders who we had strained relationship. That's all I'm gonna say about that. It was strained. And as they were giving me the feedback, it was feedback that I vehemently disagreed with. I grew, I learned, but at that moment in time, really disagreed with it. And I was asking questions they weren't able to answer in what I thought was a way that would give me satisfaction. So I was very much in my emotions. And when I get angry, I cry. I hate that. Do I have any other angry criers? Drop me in the comments. I hate crying when I get angry. And so I asked them, I was like, can I have a moment? They said yes. I go to stand up. They panic. They're like, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to the bathroom. And when I came back to that conversation, I was very much in my fight mode. And I have replayed that moment again and again and again as to what could I have done in that moment that would have made a more positive impact. And it was because my brain was seeing danger. It was danger, Will Robinson, danger. It was everywhere. So I had all of these emotions, all of these hormones, everything being pumped into my body that was making me want to fight. So instead of hearing them, I was arguing. I was combative. Now, when we think about these moments, that's not how I want to show up. And this is the power of emotional intelligence. It doesn't mean that we're going to do the right thing all the time, as in that moment, definitely didn't do the right things. But I was able to think about it later and figure out, okay, what was the actual triggering moment? Like, what was that caused me to go from, okay, I'm a logical person, all up in emotions, popping off to my leader and his leader, saying things that even today make me get a little red in embarrassment that, oh, I can't believe I did that. When we are in control of our emotions and our emotions line up with our logic and who we're trying to be, it's a lot easier to move forward. But when emotional intelligence goes out the door, and it will for all of us at some point or another, then that's when we start acting against our values and against who we're trying to be. And so this book really dives in and starts breaking apart the science behind why we do that. So if you've ever had one of those moments where you're like, why did I say that to a person I love? That was hurtful. Didn't really mean to do that. Or, why do I cry when I'm angry? Or why do I start trying to please the person who hurt me? If you have any of those questions, this will be the chapter for you. It starts pulling back that curtain a little bit and helps us understand why we do the things we do. As when we know the why behind it, then we start getting our control back so we can start showing up in the way that we choose to. All right, so with that, that is it for this week's Weekly Wisdom. Don't forget to join me next week. Next week, we're dealing with one of my absolute favorite chapters. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. We'll be talking about what that means and what you can do to make sure that you don't wreck yourself. All right, have a wonderful week. And don't forget, as always, you got this.